Good morning. Welcome to another week of the Gimbal Weekly Update. I hope your week is a spectacular one. I hope your families are doing well. I hope you're able to just enjoy the springtime. Here in central Indiana, we had a switch back from the beautiful springtime weather to a little bit of winter like this week, but I think that's coming to a close before too long, and we'll be able to just enjoy the beauty and splendor of creation here again. I was going to do a little special summary later in the show today. Doug's getting some training out of town today, and we really highly value training as a team. The idea that you can continue learning in life is really, I think, what keeps you relevant, no matter what it is you're learning about. I had lunch with a client yesterday, and I just asked her the question, what is it that keeps you so curious? Because I think curiosity is kind of a kindred spirit of learning, and curiosity, I think, keeps you young forever. Think about it. What was it like when you were a little kid and you were just learning about all kinds of things? You know, you maybe hadn't seen a TV before and the splendor of a TV, and now the kids see cell phones and the splendor of that. But just curiosity, I think, creates opportunities beyond everything that you can imagine. So keep it curious out there. I threw a punchline on the top of the disclaimers: don't grieve because I died, celebrate because I lived. It's risky out there. The risk is an unknown expectation, and so the unknown isn't death. We're all going to die one day. The question is, are we going to live? And that's the risky part. Are you going to live? And so that's what I want to throw out there to you later in the show and talk through that a little bit. But what has been going on in the market this week has been a unique week. I'll share my screen with you here shortly, as soon as I can get control of this guy. The market has ebbed up a bit this week, and yet below the water level, it's not as obvious. I showed you all this screen pretty regularly, just an indicator that I watch, and this is our database, Market Smith, that shows us the stocks in the market. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Has a total number of stocks of 9,650. And I've highlighted here in yellow when these individual time frames, either the 21-day moving average, the 50-day moving average, or the 200-day moving average, when more than half of that 9,650 are below that number. In other words, they're trending either in the real short term, the intermediate term, or the longer term. They're trending downward. And long-term statement is the trend is your friend. And so last week we only had the 50-day that half of them were trading below their trending average. But this week you can see all three of those measures are below that benchmark. And so that suggests that probably things have not improved since last week. And yet when I share the screen with the benchmarks over here, it appears as though they have. If I mark, this is the S&P 500. These are 500 of the largest, most well-known companies out there. And so a week from today is the 28th. So the 21st is right. Can't get my cursor to stop. The 21st would be right there. The index closed at 4133 a week ago. We're up a little bit at 4138. So we're just up a smidge, but more stocks are down for the week. Isn't that interesting? And it's kind of talking about averages. You know, if you put 1 foot in boiling hot water and 1 foot in ice water, how am I doing? On average, not too bad. And that's kind of what's been going on in the market this week. Is it looks like the indices are up, but more stocks are down than they were last week, which is really interesting as well. And we can look at the same thing with the NASDAQ index. The NASDAQ is trading a little bit down today, but it's trading at 12,127, and on the 21st it was at 0.97, so it's up about 30 points. But again, if you take into consideration what I said about the number of stocks that are below it, it's telling you that big weighted, like bigger companies like the Googles and the Amazons and things like that are driving this market. Other companies are struggling and their stock prices are trending downward. We noticed in the last week a lot of healthcare stocks have hit new highs, and so the healthcare market tends to be a defensive area, meaning when you're heading towards a recession, capital tends to move towards those type of markets like the healthcare. So you if you're owning and holding healthcare stocks, good to you. They're having their day in the sun right now, and enjoy that. Let's see here. The other thing I wanted to show you to point out that is, I know Doug likes to talk about the VIX, the volatility index, and this VIX again, the VIX is kind of an indicator of this one's the like the New York Stock Exchange, but it's an indicator not of the volatility of the stocks, but the underlying stock options and how volatile they've been. And so you can see at the first of this week, the volatility a week ago was really kind of low, but the first of this week it spiked up, and that spike up is what drove a lot of those numerical number of stocks down below those averages, and they have not recovered too much. And so that's going on with the VIX. We'd like to see it stay here, but we'd also like to see the broader indexes of companies out there starting to get some strength as well. This screen right here is some daily market indicators, and what I want to point out to you is the up down volume that's over here. And what that says is that the number of stocks that end up in a day versus the number of stocks that are down for a day. If you're having a really good, strong market, you're going to have a lot more stocks that are up for a day than those that are down. And you can see on the New York Stock Exchange here, they're basically identical. Yesterday it was 1464 that were moving up and 1862 that moved down. So yesterday it was the sellers were winning, the day before the buyers were winning. You can see that same type of measure with the NASDAQ type stocks here. And I don't know if you noticed when I put this screen up a while ago, but the lines had drawn parallel for several weeks on the New York Stock Exchange. But what we've seen on the NASDAQ, the more growth-oriented stocks, the down volume has been just beaten on the up volume for really back into early March. There's not even a comparison there. So like yesterday, there were 197. Oh, this is new highs, new lows. I'm sorry. There are 197 new lows in the market yesterday versus just 56 new highs. And for you to have a bull market, stocks have to have new highs. It's I can't remember if it was Mark Twain or who said it, is only buy stocks that go up, and if they don't go up, don't buy them. Well, a lot of stocks aren't going up right now, so it's challenging out there, so be careful. One other kind of idea I was going to point out to you was the kind of probably one of the underlying risk in the market is, and no stocks, whenever I show a screen or Doug shows a screen, they're not ever a recommendation. They're just used for informational purposes. And so here is First Republic Bank. There used to be what they call widow and orphan stocks, and sometimes bank stocks and utility stocks were those kind of things. But what we've said to you over and over through the years is that all stocks are speculative. No matter if your stock is always going up, there may be a day when that changes. And if you don't have the psychology and the ability to say, you know what, it may not come back this time. Because if we look at, this is First Republic Bank, if we look at it, it goes all the way to 2011. And look at that, it only went one direction. Basically, the only dips in that stock price would have been the overall market. But imagine how easy it would have been to get lulled into just holding on to that. And it created a lot of wealth. Let me go back to that weekly chart there. Oh, that's the monthly. The monthly created a lot of wealth. This price over here on the left was $30. This high right here was $222, and that's a sevenfold increase in a decade, which is a pretty good way to make some wealth right there. And if you didn't have some kind of safety mechanism in your thought process as to what am I going to do if I'm wrong on this, that stock, it peaked out in the last 12 months over here in the $180 range. And today you can buy as many shares as you want for $6 a share. And why I point that out, this particular company out, is that there is still a banking challenge going on out there. The banks are key to the free-flowing liquidity in our economy. And if bank crises would get more challenged than what we've seen so far, it would most definitely pull down other stocks as well. So I saw a headline this morning that said maybe there's a into the unknown about First Republic, that maybe somebody's going to buy them out. It doesn't look clear right now, but that's one of those risks that's out there for the stock market in this current cycle. Is the market is usually a leading indicator if you're going to go into a recession, and it'll usually bottom about the time or shortly after a recession starts and then start rallying upwards. And yet when you have a banking challenge out there, it tells you there's a lot of psychology for investors and individual families as well. And so a lot of things are going on. We haven't seen interest rates with such a spike and increase in a long time. The M2 is a measure of the liquid money in the economy, your savings accounts, checking accounts, even the currency itself. And that's had, I think, a historical drop in the amount of currency that's out there. And so when money isn't as free flowing, then you begin to see housing slow down a bit and a lot of areas in the economy slow down. So that's what's going on. We remain optimistic in how things look as we go to second half of this year, and we'll look forward to updating you on that in the next few weeks. Those of you that are local or that you have an interest, Debbie Cash was a rock star for the Gimbal financial team for a long time. She retired at the end of last year, and next week, May the 3rd at 11 o'clock to 1 p.m., not 1 a.m. That's way past my bedtime. We will do a party to celebrate Debbie. It is not a organized program. It's kind of a come and go open house. And if you haven't signed up and you'd like to, there's still time, and we'd love to have you join us and celebrate Debbie. She's a great lady, and just an honor to call her a friend. Part of the fun part of that is I got to go through a bunch of pictures of Debbie and put the slideshow together, and that in itself was a hoot to see that the two of us grew up together when I forget how many years we've been together, 25, 26 or something like that. And just seeing those pictures was just a great walk down memory lane. So the warning that I put up there, don't grieve because I died, but celebrate because I lived. And that I was talking about the risk there, that risk is an unknown outcome and death is not an unknown outcome. It is a guaranteed outcome. But whether or not you choose to live, that is a big choice. And I've got the ability to see who's out there. I know a lot of you have lived, and one of the ones that was on here a second ago flew a MiG, and so that is living life to the fullest. And I love that about you all, that you have the willingness to not only manage your resources, but to use them not just as an ends for themselves, but to use them as the fuel to live your life, whether that's helping others, whether that's chasing your dreams, whether that is doing great things for other people with it. It's just a cool thing for you to see. So I had unexpectedly a young friend die this week, and that is just a hard thing to walk through. I was with the family a lot during that process, but I think a lot of what helps drive me as a financial advisor is my sister-in-law was killed by a drunk driver in 1988, 31-year-old woman, 4 children, 12, 10. 6 and 4 at the time. I had no idea how to frame that event. It caused me to ask a lot of questions. One, like, is there a God? And if the God that I believe in is real, why would he let good things happen to bad things happen to good people, or the other good things happen to bad people? But that was 1988. It caused me to stop and think, go beyond what the norm was, what people told me in Sunday school and things, and chase out what was real in my spiritual realm. And in that, it also helped me learn to grieve better, helped me to chase the pain of people, not to be afraid of grieving people, and just helped me to think better as a financial advisor, because there are seasons in life that we march through with our resources, and those resources mean different things to us at different times. And that is really an important thing to think about for yourself. The resources that you have don't have to stay at the same level forever. And so having the mindset to realize there may be a time that I pour out some of these resources for this specific event, those type of thoughts come with looking at life from kind of your life expectancy and the reality that there's a lot of uncertainty in when this journey will end. And so because of that, I was around some of the decisions this week that the family had to make, and reminded me of really this book. Maybe some of you have this. If you don't have it, we still have a few copies available. I'm not sure if we're going to do a revised copy of it or not, because this show will probably not be the most watched by Gimbal, because most people don't want to talk about living before loss. That's the reason why a lot of people don't have wills. They don't want to deal with the idea that there is a certainty called death. And so when I kind of blew the dust off a copy of this today to use it as a catalyst for our conversation here, I popped to the first page, and it says, on the introduction of this book, it says, the catalyst to pen this book was not the reality of death, but the anxiety I noticed among client survivors and their efforts to sort through the affairs of the loved one. And I think that's just that's a part of living and dying, the anxiety or the emotions of it. But the part that we as the survivors, or the people that are living today, is we can be proactive in some of the things that we do to take some of the practical stress away from our loved ones. And there's a lot of ways you can do that. And on page 12 and 13, I put a planning guide for your loved ones, and it talks about a variety of documents that you can organize and have in an orderly manner, whether that's funeral arrangement documents if you've done a prepaid funeral, wills, trusts, birth certificates, marriage licenses. If you served in the military, there's benefits for marker that come there, and so you have to have that documentation, which is pretty hard to find in that stressful moment of the life cycle there. And insurance policies, a variety of things. And I was kind of naive enough when we put this together to think that people might fill this book out and put it in there along with some other really helpful details. But I'm not patting myself on the back, but I think this is an incredible tool. Eric has been doing some work here in the office with me, and we've been looking at some electronic versions of kind of storing that information and make it available. I'm torn whether we're going to introduce that to you all, because my experience over the years is that like just doing this stuff is really hard for folks to do. If we made it available electronically, I might do a little quiz or a survey on this next week and see who would be interested in doing that if we made it available electronically. But I've talked with some of you about just doing it old school in an analog world where you write these things down. And I'll show you an example of what that might look like here. This is how I do it. I don't do it electronically. And these are just some files that I made. And somebody used this term the other day, who are your six? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then as I was in the funeral planning here yesterday, that was the question that the funeral director asked it, who are going to be the six pallbearers? And I think the person that asked me that a few weeks ago, their question wasn't necessarily getting this detail for my funeral in place, but they're saying probably those 6 people are going to be the closest people in your friendship, and identifying those people, not to carry your casket, so to speak, but to identify those people, to make sure you let them know how valuable they are to you, to help encourage them in life, and just to appreciate them for the time that you have with them. And so I titled this one "My 6," and then I also was talking about the military. There's a military thing, check your 6, or who's behind you. And I thought about that, even as sometimes there are some enemies behind you, but there's another way of looking at that too, is who are the 6 that are going to be behind your family if something happened to you? Who are those 6 people that you can count on, and kind of look that loved one in the face and help them in the midst of their emotional grieving, let alone their internal grieving of just the missing you and those things. And so I thought about the number 1 person on that list might be, who is the person that's going to come beside your family and help them at that point. Sometimes people rely on a pastor. They may not have a pastor that is really familiar with the family dynamics, but having somebody that you can trust that can come alongside your family can sure take the stress and anxiety out of those immediate jolts of losing a loved one. That's worthy. I mean, if you don't do anything else over the weekend, maybe write down who are those 6, who will be my 6, and then what to do now. Like when a loved one passes, what do I do now? And that can be a fairly easy solution to get the ball rolling, is if you choose to do a prepaid funeral. In Indiana, my understanding is, and some of you are from out of state that are watching today, so in Indiana, a prepaid funeral has to go through a third party. The funeral home doesn't actually hold your money. You have to buy an insurance policy. Generally, those policies will have an inflation factor built into it, so that whatever funeral you desired at the point of signing up for that will grow by whatever inflation factor is built into that contract. And that contract then is held by an insurance company who will provide those resources that you identified. And so having that pre-planned helps the family a ton. And we threw some ideas in here of what songs you like, what type of service you want, and those kind of details. As for me personally, I've kind of opted out of the traditional funeral. I've just thought that most of the celebrating Keith would have happened during my lifetime. I have lived a great life, and I'm assuming I got another 20 or 30 years in me, and intend to do that, but I don't need a funeral service, so to speak, to do that. And so we've built into our plan to rent out a restaurant somewhere and just have a gathering of people that they want to tell stories about me. There'll be some good ones out there that you can do that, but to have those things identified can sure take a lot of stress away from your family members. And so what do you do now? And I've shown you this document in past weeks. We've got these available, 5 wishes. This is before you pass away. It talks about what are your healthcare desires that you want, and it gives you some clarity of really what you would prefer to happen and how you would want your family members to think about your health if you weren't able to make those decisions yourself. And that's a hard thing for the family member. I did that for my mom, and if you don't know, which she didn't tell me, then you are making some assumptions. I didn't know. I took the assumption I was going to treat her body as I would treat my own, or want mine treated, and that's how I made my decisions. But if your loved ones don't know that, and that's your desire, it's really worth telling them that. So inside this document, what I have in here is another document that I put together. It is multiple pages here, and it's front and back on those, but she knows this thing is this, but this says, dear Connie, I'm sorry I checked out before you. I love you and look forward to seeing you on the other side. and then it goes down and gives her some instructions on how to move forward. And you know, ideally that number one of the 6 will be there along beside her, but this will be a document that can help explain some things to her, some things to be aware of, some cautions to have in her thought process. And that takes a little bit of time to put that together for your loved ones. But then, and if you have an interest, email me and I'll get you these sort of things. But these are physical files. Again, Eric and I have talked about some electronic versions of this. But inside that, these yellow ones are the estate type documents, which would be power of attorney, the will. This one's the red one is a medical power of attorney, but this whole section here is my estate plan, Connie and my estate plan. This green section are financial accounts. So simply in that, I can just throw a most recent statement for our financial situation in there, so that if something would happen to myself or Connie, that information would be easily accessible by our loved ones. Next section are insurance type situations, could be health insurance, life insurance. We've got some annuities. It's got the annuity documents in here. And then this blue section are more practical things. Titles to vehicles are in there. Credit card statements, you know, if you've got credit cards out there, that helps the family find that by just throwing the statements in their most recent statement. And a really critical thing are websites that have important passwords on there. Be sure to put that in there, marriage license, birth certificates, and things of that nature. And then finally, some health documents. Maybe those might help the family, not in necessarily my passing, but if they had to take over those healthcare power of attorney documents, that would give them a list of any medications that we might be on, allergies, things like that, that could help them make those decisions. And practically, I don't know that information. Connie has that for our family members in her head. And so for me to be able to help our children in those situations, if Connie weren't with me, I had to set up a file to know what our kids' allergies and things of that nature are, because it's just not something that everybody has in their head. Yeah, hopefully I've carried this idea with an uplifting attitude and a just not making a Debbie Downer today, because really it doesn't have to be. Like there's a lot of blessings that come in by thinking through some of these things. And if you need some help with it, we would love to help you. We would be a cheerleader for your success on these things. We can help you build a file system, and we can really help you with a lot of thoughts on the planning process. And in a really easy way to kind of keep those files up to date would just be if you are kind of end up finding yourself in a funeral home visiting a family or a loved one or a friend. And maybe once a year, if that happens, that'd be a good catalyst to remind you to pull out the old statements out of those files and update those with newer statements for your loved ones. So anyway, that is the essence of this week. I am thankful for you. I am thankful for my friend Elizabeth that stirred me to have this conversation with you. I know where she is today. I taught her in a Sunday school class some 20 years ago, and she blessed my soul just in the last year or so, that she came up to me at a dinner we were at together and thanked me for all that time I poured into her those years. And so even in the midst of grieving, we can celebrate those that we love. And we are here at Gimbal Financial to be a great source of encouragement for you to live your best life. I'll see you guys with Doug next week. Take care.